Hello everybody and welcome to another author interview. As you can see, I'm not in the in-house publishing offices. I'm at the Mind Sanctuary at the home of Soraya Saraswati. Hello Soraya.
Hi Ocean,
How are you?
nice to have you here.
It is awesome to be here. This environment is fantastic. And today we're here to talk about this wonderful book that's just been released called Shining Through From Grief to Gratitude. And we're going to get Soraya's take on the book, the inspiration behind it, and what the vision is for this title. So Soraya, how about you fill us in? What is Shining Through?
Well, Shining Through is really a legacy that I've written for my brother and my son, who both died by suicide.
So this is a very personal journey.
It's a personal memoir, and I began to write when I was sitting by the bedside of my son, who sadly suicided in an Australian hospital 7 years ago. And it all happened very quickly and very shockingly while he was under care. And I decided in that moment that his life would be remembered, knowing that now that 8 people die by suicide every day in Australia. So we have shocking rates of suicide.
We were talking about this before we turned on the cameras, and you mentioned some statistics in Belgium and Europe. And can you just talk to us about that compared to other countries that have, well, I'm not going to say greater cause of, but we live in this wonderful country.
I know, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, we live in the most beautiful, clean country where we can do and be anything we want to be. But I was in Belgium earlier this year when I was on a music tour with my husband, and I was talking to a therapist there, and he was saying that Belgium had one of the highest rates of suicide in Europe, and the statistic he quoted was 7 people die each day by suicide. And now with the new statistics coming in Australia, in September it's 8 people die in Australia. And that dumbfounded me, knowing what a beautiful country we have.
So the inspiration to bring the book to life is quite obvious, and we've spoken about this previously as well, which is the cathartic experience it was for you to put this down on paper. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Well, as I sat, my son was revived and was on life support for 3 days, and then I had to make the heartbreaking decision to take him off. I sat with him for 11 hours until he took his last breath. And in that 11 hours, it's like I was propelled back through my life, because when someone you love dies by suicide, this huge question, why? What did I do wrong? Or what could I have done differently comes up. And with that comes a massive amount of grief. It's tainted by shame, by anger, by disappointment, by sadness. And in asking that why, I retraced my life, and I really share my life's memoir in this book. After the celebration of Prem's life, I realised that I really wanted to heal. And so a large part of the book is my healing journey as a yoga and meditation teacher, as a mindfulness instructor and an advocate of healthy lifestyle. I found it shocking that I found myself in this position. But I now realise that suicide doesn't decipher between people. It doesn't matter how clean you are, what a wonderful person you are, what a great and well-meaning parent you've been. Suicide can happen to anyone.
It's a very defining moment in a family or friend's life when we lose someone to suicide. And I mentioned to you earlier that I've lost 2 people close to me. I'm very fortunate that it's only been 2. One of them was to suicide. And the inability to understand my feelings at the time was extraordinary. I couldn't make sense of it. And it's only been since talking to you, again off camera, but I've actually looked a bit deeper into how I feel about this. And I'm kind of finding my way through that now, 15 years later. And I guess, is that the vision for the book? Is that what you want readers to take from it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ocean. For me, it was writing the book became a therapy for me in itself, because it gave me an opportunity to explore every shade of grey within my own psyche and every emotion and feeling and concern I had, and I could uncover in my journey to wholeness again to come shining through. And since then I've spoken to so many other people who have been hit by, I won't say ripple effect, by the tsunami that, you know, pushes out into our communities and touches people who have been bereaved by losing friends, colleagues, or loved ones to suicide. And in my book, I share, basically it's a thread of mindfulness, of meditation, of loving kindness. And as one bereaved, that loving kindness often has to be to the self, you know. We need to be kind to ourselves when we're grieving. And we need a compassionate ear as well, so compassionate listening and sharing and being able to acknowledge how we're feeling without being tainted with guilt or shame, which, as I said, can often make bereavement by suicide so much more difficult.
Well, I'm one for rattling cages. Look, you're on a mission. It's quite obvious when we met that you made it clear to me what your mission was in regards to making the awareness of suicide prevention and how to deal with the grief of this much more of a public domain. It is a taboo subject. Why is it taboo? Why aren't people talking about this more than they should? Because this is frustrating.
I actually gave a talk at Port Stephens last year, and it was suicide is not a dirty word. And it was one of the titles I considered for the book at one stage. But, you know, often when we find a subject difficult, we do everything we can to steer around talking about it. You know, people when they ran into me, they'd go, "Oh, hi Soraya, how are the boys?" Because I have 4 sons. And I go, "Well, you know, Runa's doing this, other son's doing this," and Prem sadly died by suicide. And immediately the conversation would cut, end of story. "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, I've got to go." and that's really, really sad. That we can't go there and have this very, very important conversation. That in itself can help build guilt and shame around suicide.
Creates a culture.
It does. And then if someone is feeling suicidal, which many of us do, in fact, many, many more people think about suiciding than actually do, and there are many more attempts than 8 per day, then for them, they don't then express how they're really feeling because there's this culture of shame and guilt around it.
Right.
You see what I mean? But we need to open that conversation so that if someone's feeling vulnerable, we can say to them something simple like, "How you going?" And they might say, "Oh, I'm, you know, pretty shit, I'm not feeling very well," whatever it is. And then we can say, if we're really worried, "Have you had thoughts of suicide?" Now that just might be an opener for them to express how they're really feeling and how dark their thoughts may be.
That's right. Well, that's the game changer, isn't it? That's when the whole situation takes a shift.
And it takes judgment out of the way, it takes shame and guilt out of the way, and it's just saying, "Hey, I really care about you. We can go anywhere in this conversation." I'm planning mindful moment videos, which will be up on my website, so that people who perhaps are struggling with anxiety or dark thoughts, or finding it difficult to deal with their, 60 to 90,000 thoughts flowing through the mind every day, and who doesn't find that difficult?
Well, that puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
I mean, that's an incredible fact on its own. I've also had meditation and mindfulness digital downloads and CDs available to help people to learn to become calmer and to learn to deal with their thoughts, learn to actually step off the mind train and become an observer rather than, get stuck with those looping thoughts that can lead us into some pretty hard places.
So the journey continues.
And the journey will always continue, Ocean. I live my life to help other people come shining through just as I have.
I love that. And there is actually a free download within this. When you purchase a copy of Soraya's book, there's actually a link to a free download off her website. So make sure you guys get yourself a copy of this. If we do not know somebody that hasn't been touched by suicide, we know somebody that knows somebody that has.
Absolutely.
These statistics are frightening. and I think we have to take it upon ourselves to make a small change in the culture that is suicide awareness. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Awesome. This is the website across the bottom of the screen. Make sure you guys go and check it out. Soraya, thank you so much for welcoming me into your home. I love this place.
Thank you, Ocean. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.